This is the Art of Network Engineering podcast. In this podcast, we'll explore tools, technologies, and talented people. We aim to bring you information that will expand your skill sets and toolbox and share the stories of fellow network engineers.
Can you tell me how to get to Cybersecurity Street?
Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog here. Today we're going over basic internet hygiene. Let's start with a popular attack vector, email. Save the princes in need of help to the Disney movies, kids. Don't click on random links from people you don't know. Next, as much as I like him, Big Bird 123 is a terrible password. Consider using a password manager with a randomly generated password. Don't forget to add two-factor authentication where you can for additional protection. Alright, finally, let's go to a website and check its server certificate to make sure it's valid. What's this pop-up down here? It says, to ensure a fantastic experience, this website uses...
cookies! Nom 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 nom.
Son of a cookie monster, you scared the lily pad out of me.
I like cookies.
Be careful, big guy. These are different cookies. You could be Googling your favorite double chocolate chunks, then all of a sudden, an ad will pop up for them in your Facebook feed. Well, while I try to calm down from the near heart attack Cookie Monster just gave me, let's get into the next segment, the art of network engineering.
Oh, bravo. Thank you, Cookie Dan and Danny Monster.
God.
Danny Monster.
I'm pretty sure I messed that up.
That was fabulous.
That was fun.
That was fabulous.
Good job, Dan.
All right, now I need to figure out if Sesame Street music, if I can get that.
Well, I don't know if you've
copyright.
noticed, I've got a theme going on of like PBS things. So it should all be public domain. Go for it.
Okay.
All right. Welcome to the Art of Network Engineering. Thank you, Tim and Dan, for that very unique intro. That one will definitely go up on our YouTube into the archive, so you can watch it over and over and over again. I am AJ Murray at No Blinky Blinky, and he is Tim Bertino. Tim, how you doing?
I as well like cookies, AJ.
I think we all do. I wouldn't trust a person who didn't, honestly. That seems kind of weird to me. Dan at Howdy Packet. Dan, how you doing?
Howdy, AJ. Oh gosh. Hey AJ, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm making it.
You're making it. We're gonna get through it.
We'll make it through.
All right, and last but not least, he is Andy at PermitIP Andy and at PermitIPAndy.com. Andy, how you doing?
I'm good, AJ. Thank you. I started studying for Encore last night, so I'm back.
I saw that.
Yeah.
You're blowing up Twitter with that.
I didn't mean to, but yeah. I was exhausted after I put the kids down, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get up at 5 tomorrow morning, so let me just hunker down. And
Yeah.
The hardest thing is starting, right? So I got started. I spent an hour and 40 minutes on OSPF, and I feel good about it. I'm back in the saddle. Yeah.
Nice. Do you have a test date set yet? You want to throw that out into the world and commit to it?
Yeah, I do have a test date set. I don't know if I'm going to keep it. November something or another. I got it written down, but I want to pass Encore before the end of the year. That's my goal.
Cool. Can't wait to see it happen.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. Well, let's get into some wins, shall we? There it is. All right, winning this week is Ray6221. They passed the NSE4. Congratulations.
Hey, congrats.
This is a nice one. I love this. Greg G, a new granddaughter has been born. The biggest win of his life so far. Congratulations, Greg. That is awesome.
Congrats.
NetStackology passed the PC NSE. Congratulations.
Nice.
M. Bobo started a new position as a network engineer on 10.2. Long journey through certifications and working on the help desk, but it was worth it. Congratulations. That's huge.
Nice. Very nice.
And Zapdos26 got a promotion at work. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Good job.
And we got some new Patreons joining us this week. Congratulations to us for some more Patreons, and thank you for supporting us at the Art of Network Engineering. Thank you to Joe Mai, Charles, and Robert. Thank you so very much for your support of our show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Means a lot.
Awesome. All right, Andy, hit me again with that goat scream.
Yeah, right
I
there.
love it. Hey, A1 fans, AJ here to remind you about NordVPN.com. NordVPN will help secure you wherever you go. I use NordVPN on all of my personal devices. Whenever I'm out and about, I just go into the NordVPN app, hit Quick Connect, and away I go. Nice and secure. Don't have to worry about prying eyes, anybody looking at my connection. If I choose to go work from a coffee shop locally, or even while I'm traveling, if I bring my personal devices, I will use NordVPN to help keep things safe and secure. I'm using NordVPN right now, and there's no degradation in my signal. Everything looks good when you guys watch us on the live streams. So I can't say enough good things about NordVPN. They have some great additional services included with their VPN product. They'll scour the dark web for your credentials and see if they've been involved in any sort of hacks or anything. And then if they have, they'll let you know, and you can go change your passwords and do whatever you need to do to help keep yourself safe and secure. They also have a mode that will block any websites or ads known to possess malware, and they just have general ad blocking anyway, because who wants ads? As I record an ad. Anyway, if you want NordVPN, and you do, go to nordvpn.com/TAONE for the Art of Network Engineering, and you can get a really great deal, 73% off 2 years plus 4 months free. So again, that's 73% off 2 years plus 4 months free of NordVPN. If you forget that URL, just go to nordvpn.com. At checkout, you can use the promo code TAONE for the Art of Network Engineering, and we appreciate your support as well as NordVPN support of the Art of Network Engineering podcast. Now back to the show. Awesome. All right. So this week we are talking about our experience. Tim and I were both recently on Networking Field Day 26. Also, one of our fellow Patreons and friends, Gerard, was also there and joined us. But we wanted to take some time and kind of share our thoughts, but definitely keep an eye on our YouTube channel, because Tim, myself, and Gerard are going to sit down and have a little fireside chat about what we learned at Networking Field Day and get some more content out there for you. But we wanted to take some time to kind of talk about what is Field Day, kind of recap that, and then we'll go over what happened on kind of our experience with Networking Field Day 26, and then we'll kind of go through and touch on each of the presenters and kind of give our thoughts. And I know Andy and Dan are going to pick our brains, and the Patreons too are welcome to ask us questions as we go on through this. So for me, this was my second Networking Field Day. Tim, I know this was your first. What was it like?
It was incredible, AJ. I didn't know what to expect, and I was definitely nervous about it. But I got to say, starting off, I was incredibly impressed with the Network Field Day staff for putting this together. They haven't been doing this in a virtual environment for very long, and they just had it nailed. I mean, they queued up the presenters. They had them start on time. I don't think we started any of them late or really any technical issues. It was really impressive. I will say the event really challenged my lack of focus, because a big part of it's community engagement, right? These companies are making new advertisements. They're coming out with new things, and that's a big reason for the delegates, is to get that out in front of people. So trying to pay attention to content while getting things out on tweets and taking notes and that kind of thing. I finally got a hang of it, but it was definitely different.
Yeah, and I guess we should have started at that point, right? So Networking Field Day is part of Tech Field Day, and the whole premise behind Tech Field Day is they want to bring in the companies and present a little bit on new technologies they're working on, new solutions, and the real big difference is this really isn't a sales pitch, because there's no sale on the line here, right? Like, we're not sitting there listening to the pitch. We're not going to sign a PO over anything like that. We're going to ask questions. We're going to poke holes and see, try to dig deeper, understand more about the solution. And then, like Tim said, as content creators, bloggers, podcasters, YouTubers, we're here to take this all in and bring it back to our audiences and, share that information with you and get you excited about the new stuff that we've learned about. And so, primarily the event is live streamed, and we can interact with folks on Twitter, or any other like social platform that we occupy. And then all of these sessions are recorded. So, and I believe at this point they're all up there. So if you can go back and watch all of the presentations from Networking Field Day 26, they edited them up a little bit. So if there was any bloopers, which I don't think there were any notable bloopers, you missed out on those. But so this was my second one. Just as anxious and nervous as the first time around. Even though my first one was in person, it was still, you're kind of surrounded by all these titans of tech and people that you see all the time on social media. So there's a little bit of like, being starstruck or awe factor. And so it was really cool. It was a lot of fun to be, up there with you guys and the other delegates. And so if you're interested in becoming a delegate, I think one of the biggest requirements is, you kind of have to have some sort of audience, right? And, Tim's got an audience with his blog and the podcast here, and I've got an audience with my blog and the podcast as well. And Gerard's definitely got an audience with his Twitter account and his blog. So that's kind of the first big step is having, being an advocate for technology and having a presence and a podium, if you will, to stand on and talk about things that you care about in the tech arena. So if you've got that and you've got good social profiles, you can go to techfieldday.com, and they have a link that you can click on up at the top for delegates. And under that, there's become a field day delegate. And it's a Google form that you can fill out and kind of justifying why you think you should become a delegate. And I think there might be a spot for referrals, if I remember correctly. So if you know another field day delegate that kind of referred you to go do this, make sure you put them down on the form. But it's a ton of fun. I had a great time. Tim, it looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that these are technical deep dives. Like these vendors are instructed to not focus this on sales, and that they are technical deep dives because they want the delegates to see those kind of technologies, right, and those kind of explanations, and they don't want to deal with the sales on top of it. So yeah, you don't have to sit through. I mean, obviously there's going to be some slides and some talk at the head. Usually they'll start with the sales leaders, but they get right into the engineering very quickly in each segment.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So the presentations that they're giving, is it for unreleased products and features? Like, are these things that people don't know about yet? Is that why they present them to the delegates?
So some of the presentations are announcements at Tech Field Day of new features to existing solutions or new solutions entirely. I believe some of the announcements that we saw this past Network Field Day, they had previously released those new things like the week prior or earlier in that week, but they were just kind of formally making the announcement at Tech Field Day or Networking Field Day. So it's
Okay.
not always, super hush hush, the stuff that we're hearing, but it is typically, some kind of new exciting announcement. Although there was, I think, one vendor, they just wanted to get their name out, and we'll get to them in a few minutes. But they hadn't really heard of Networking Field Day or Tech Field Day, and somebody recommended to them like, oh, hey, you guys, get your name out, go sponsor a Network Field Day presentation slot, and present to the delegates and help get your market going, if you will.
So it's not necessarily a specific product release that they do there. It's more of a
Right.
conversation with thought leaders.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, here's who we are. Here's what we're doing. What do
Yeah.
you think? Kind of thing. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, they are looking for feedback. So what's really cool about this is that there's the initial presentation, which is live streamed, and the delegates can ask questions at any point during that presentation. After we're done with that presentation, we get some one-on-one time with the presenters and other people behind the scenes. Maybe they're like technical marketing engineers or just, the engineers that work on the product. And we can ask deeper questions. We don't always want to make any company look bad. So I know that there's a lot of delegates that kind of held certain questions until after the live stream was over. And then we got into those kind of discussions after the fact. And then I think there was some more maybe brutally honest feedback that we waited to give until, again, after doors were closed, if you will. So it's definitely good stuff. So this past networking field day, there was a number of presenters, and the first that started us off was Juniper. And Juniper had kind of an exciting announcement. I believe it was an announcement, and it was their solution to, automated software-defined access, if you will. I know software-defined access is kind of like a Cisco term, but it was basically Juniper's version of that. And I was really excited for that kind of announcement because I think when more of those solutions come to market, it forces the others to, really start to beef up and get better with those products and refine them a little bit more. What did you think about that, Tim?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So Juniper's offering is basically an automated campus fabric to be able to do overlays on the fly, and they did show us a demo. It was very quick and very slick, and yeah, I would see it as a direct competitor to Cisco's SD Access. So it's them bringing this to the market.
Right. Yeah.
So did they have with Cisco's SD Access, you have to have DNA Center? Did they have something similar to that, or was it set up a little bit different, or how did it work?
So if I remember correctly, theirs was all cloud driven. The devices talked to the cloud, and then you controlled, they would check into the cloud, you would then claim them, and then you could, start to build your fabric from there. I can't remember if there was like an on-premises version that would support.
That's what I'm trying to remember as well.
Yeah.
What was it saying?
Like an on-premises hardware or VM solution that you could deploy and kind of own it locally.
You know what it is, AJ? It's all driven by the cloud Mist AI. So they brought Mist into it as well to be that cloud controller.
Right. Yeah. So the Mist AI has been Marvin is what they call it, and that's been really big with their wireless products in Mist, and they're pulling that into the wired arena. And so one of the cool things that they demoed was the ability for like a level 1 tech, help desk, network engineer, whatever, to be able to go into the Marvin and start to chat with Marvin basically and do some real basic troubleshooting to figure out issues. And Marvin could pull information, provide it to the engineer, and either help provide more information up to other levels to troubleshoot further, or fix it right then and there with that tier 1 engineer. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, so interesting. I would break something like that. Ask all the dumb questions. Do you like cookies? See what it comes back with.
And that was another thing they discussed, is because Mist and Marvis was definitely geared toward wireless, and this pitch was also them bringing it across the board. So they're integrating these solutions across their wired, wireless, SD-WAN, and data center network offerings.
Gotcha. So is it kind of like Meraki then? Would you kind of compare it to them in a sense?
Honestly, yeah. So one of the questions I had for them was basically how does this work? How do your wired and wireless gear communicate to be managed by Mist AI? Let me get that up here. So I asked, how do customers enable the different platforms, wired, wireless, WAN, to send data into Mist AI? Is it just a checkbox into Mist AI on each platform? And how does that conversation look? And the answer was that their APs communicate to Mist over 443 telemetry to the cloud, and the switches communicate over SSH port 2200. So that's how they communicate. It's all a big trend that I noticed. I don't know if you did as well, AJ, that I noticed throughout the entire network field day was analytics. I mean, a lot of these
Yes.
products are analytics driven. So Juniper's just trying to get as much data into customers' Mist AI clouds as possible so that they can make intelligent decisions and fix things quickly.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
absolutely.
sounds really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that's a little bit different with that solution that you don't see with Meraki, right? Like you can configure all of the Meraki devices from the cloud, but you don't, you know, state or place a switch in a role, right? Like you don't declare that this is a core switch or a distribution switch or an access switch, but you do that in the Juniper solution. So you basically, make all your connections between the core, distribution, and access, and you declare at that point, like, this is my core switch and this is my distribution. And then it will just configure it from there per, how they do it. Yeah.
So like it'll put the L3s where it needs to be and all that kind
Right.
of stuff. Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
Awesome. So next on the network field day list was Arista. And I got to be honest, I'm not an ISP guy. And if I understand what Arista was bringing to us, it was kind of like that network automation piece that Juniper had presented on, and we've seen from Cisco with SD Access, but they were bringing it to ISP networks. So they were going to completely automate and provision the layer 2, layer 3 VPN and pseudo wire, and just kind of make it all happen in an automated fashion. Tim, did you kind of pick up the same thing from that presentation?
Yeah, I did. It was definitely geared toward large data centers and service providers. That's kind of what I felt. I think it was actually trying to kind of bridge the gap of between companies that aren't necessarily hyperscalers and companies that aren't small mom and pop shops. It was kind of trying to find that happy medium of customers that may be enterprise customers, but to their sub customers, they act as ISPs essentially.
Right.
So it was definitely geared toward that. One thing that I really appreciated that they took the time to talk about is they talked about data center switching scale. So basically, the two methodologies are that you can scale your routed data center fabrics either up or out. And scaling up was geared toward these large chassis switches with multiple modules, and the scale out model is the wonderful data center phrase we have all come to love, and that is spine and leaf. So spine and leaf is scaling out, where if you need bandwidth, you add a spine, and each leaf connects to each spine. So what they were really driving home there is that the scale out method with spine and leaf is really the more flexible, the easier way to scale, versus kind of getting locked into chassis and needing potentially specific line cards. And if you have some sort of a major failure in the back plane, then you all of a sudden need to move all of your line cards to a replaced chassis. So I really thought that was cool that they took the time to go through that.
Right.
So do you think that's kind of a change that's happening? Like people, like they're kind of getting away from the big chassis models and they're trying to do the more spine and leaf, spread it out a little bit. You think?
Well, you're an ACI guy, Dan. You tell me.
Well, I'm trying to talk about it.
Yeah, I Dan, I hadn't really thought about it a whole lot other than knowing some ACI. But yeah, it really does make sense. And I kind of want to say, you can correct me, but I think Cisco even kind of started pushing the spine and leaf topologies even pre-ACI. It makes more sense from the scale factor to be able to just add things laterally and connect them up versus kind of being bound to that chassis.
Yeah.
Are you guys aware that spine and leaf is not a new architecture?
How old is it, AJ?
It's like from the 70s.
What?
I need some more info here.
Yeah, so it was, if I'm remembering my CCDA enough here, I think it was Robert A. Kloss. That's why they sometimes call it the Kloss network, or Close, depending on how you pronounce it, right? And it was originally designed and put in telephone switching networks, like PSTN, because that's how you got the hyper growth and the hyper scale from that kind of design from networking. And so they've taken that architecture and they've applied it to networking as we know it, and not the telephone networks.
And hot dang it, it works.
And it works real good.
That's exactly what they said.
Hot dang it.
Hot dang it, it worked.
The other thing that I took away from the Arista presentation was they were really focusing a lot more on openness with their automation solutions. So, that you could automate their fabric over, the Arista devices, but if you needed to automate and build paths in your network on non-Arista devices, they were using all sorts of open source platforms to enable you to do that. So it wasn't such a closed ecosystem. It was, very open. And so I thought that was cool. And they were making some really good use of network automation tools to, validate configurations before you push them. So it takes your network as it is today, you give it a proposed configuration and it will validate it before you push it, so that way if you screwed up your BGP or your IGP config, it would say, well, no, you don't want to push that because you're going to take down, this kind of section of the network. So I thought it was really cool.
Now, is that their own tool, or how would you get that feature?
So it is their platform, but they use a collection of open source tools. So it's probably something that you could ultimately build yourself because it was literally built off of all open source tools.
Okay.
But they even provided some.
Like I log into like a single pane of glass of some sort, and then that tool is in there. Is that kind of how it looks? Or?
It was more like a whole CI/CD workflow than it was just any one single tool, right?
I got you.
All right. After Arista, that brought us to the end of day one. So to kick us off on day two, we heard from Netbees. And Netbees was completely new to me, but I thought they had a pretty cool solution. And part of it was the premise was making all of your network devices a sensor in your network. If we knew everything about the network that our network knew, we could make more informed decisions. And they definitely stuck with the bees theme. I think all the collectors that took in or aggregated the data were called hives. And so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, this was really neat. So it was back to what AJ was saying about the network being a sensor, and it was all facets of it. So they had wired sensors that you can basically just plug into a switch and they can be a tap. They had wireless sensors, and they also have a client for the ever-growing work from home population, so that somebody calls into the service desk and they say, hey, I'm having all these kinds of problems. Then you've got an analytics agent on the user's workstation that's basically giving data saying, hey, this is the RSSI, this is the SNR, this is what I'm seeing is user experience for packets going through the network, that kind of thing. It's pushing that analytics to the edge, to the actual workstation.
Did they say what kind of like workload that was for the machine? Like, is that a heavy agent? Or
No, it was super low. I forget what they said, but it was like it was practically immeasurable. It put such little workload on the end user's machine. And they had done lots of testing on, I think, all the major OSs, right? Like Mac, some form of Linux that's common in enterprise, and of course Windows, and across the board, the impact is very low.
When the sales team says, "Oh, it's an agent on the end user's machine," it kind of sends a shiver down my back because it's like,
yeah, I hear you.
Okay, just add it to the list of 9 million agents that you have running on that machine, and just log them down. I mean, I've firsthand seen that, right? Like, just so many agents running on the machine. So,
and one thing I missed is part of the on-premises agents were actual like wired sensors, but you can also run this platform via containers on switch hardware. So Cisco is a vendor that is supported to run the Netbees agent on as a container right on the switch.
Interesting. So would that be like their new Catalyst 93s or something like that? Or?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I would think any platform that can run a container, it can handle it. And AJ, we might have to follow up with them. I can't remember. I think it was Netbees for when we look at doing video content. I think it was Netbees that offered up a demo environment that we might need to take a look at.
Yes. Yep. That's right.
So when you say you plug these things in your switcher, do they look like Raspberry Pis or
That honestly, that's exactly what the wired sensor looks like to me, Dan.
Okay, gotcha.
And then the Wi-Fi sensor, what I'm imagining is it can just sit on a tabletop and it'll run synthetic tests and check RSSI and SNR and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So what did they mention price points at all about any of this stuff? Because
No,
they didn't.
none of the
Okay, 'cause I was
presentations
just
touched
wondering.
on price points.
Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
if you got to
What's up?
ask, you can't afford it.
Yeah. Probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the reasoning for that too is like it was a broad audience, and you guys know how pricing goes, right? Like there's the MSRP, but nobody pays the MSRP. Everybody gets some form of discount. Your discount depends on how much you're buying. Are you in a vertical like healthcare or education or FedGovs, something like that? And
Oh,
so they could have talked about list price, but everybody would probably just turn and run away because nobody pays list price.
But
And
I think
can't-
everybody in our field kind of understands that. I'm just wondering like a ballpark, like, hey,
Yeah,
one of those wireless devices, list price it's $800, and then I'm like, okay, so I probably get it for $400 if after it's all said and done. But
right, right.
it just curious because it sounds like this is something like, oh, let's plug one in over here, let's plug one in over here, let's plug one in over here, but cha-ching, 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 that adds up. So I was just curious
Right.
if they had any pricing on it, but it sounds
Yeah.
like they don't. So.
And
Yeah,
they've
at least
got-
not that they presented. They might have something on their website.
I got you.
They've got this listed on their roadmap in Q3, so I'm not sure if it's quite out yet, but they were bringing in PC performance monitoring to their platform as well. So I'm seeing that as monitoring actual processes and memory and that kind of stuff as well, not just the network.
So like hard drive space and that kind of
Right.
thing too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So somebody calls in, says, "Hey, I'm having all these kinds of problems. My Wi-Fi sucks," right?
Yeah. That's
They
the
can
first
look
one
at
they
it
would
and
say.
say, "Well, your connectivity looks fine, but you've got this one process that's eating up 94% of your CPU. Let's figure out what
Right.
that is."
Exactly. Yeah, I have a virtual whiteboard behind my chair in my office, and I have all kinds of tally marks on there about how many times people have been like, "Hey, I think it's the network. It's running super slow." And it's well, come to find out, it's not. So I turn around.
Every time, every time Dan clears his name, he gets a check mark.
Yeah, I'm the only one keeping up with it. But
Somebody has to.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say like overall, I know we're going to touch on a few more solutions that focused on user experience, but that was definitely a focus was user experience, right? Like your network might look good, but from the perspective of the user, maybe there's something between them and Office 365 that's giving them what makes them feel like a slow connection. So
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool stuff because you can monitor your network all day long, and if your network looks good, but you've got employees working from home, they've got stuff wrong with their home networks because who knows what the hell they're doing at home, right? And then it's the internet, right? Like the path that I take to get to Office 365 is much different than the path that any of you guys take. So it could be fine for me, it could be crappy for you, and having that analytics on the end device to understand the end user's experience for that. Is it something that you can control and fix, or is it out of your hands? And that just really helps provide you with that information.
That's pretty cool. That you call it, what was this called? Netbees?
Netbees, yep.
Netbees, okay. I'll have to do some research on that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. After Netbees was, I think, one of my favorite presentations for the week. And it was along the same lines, and it was from a company called Pass Solutions. And the presenter was Tim Titus, and I think he's like the lead engineer. He's like a network engineer by trade. He's got like years and years and years of network engineering experience. So he knows network engineering, right? And it was their solution was like network monitoring on absolute steroids. I mean, their box did so much, but it wasn't like overkill, right? Like it was like your source to go if you want to know what's going on with your network.
Yeah, and there was definitely some things in there that I didn't even expect to see that was really pleasantly surprising. So
Right.
the first I want to start off with this is how they do discovery. So basically it's a server in your network, and you need to be able to find what's on your network, right? So an option is you can basically just configure what subnets you want to scan, and it's just going to scan those on an ongoing basis. I think it's configurable, but I think by default it's basically going to scan each subnet that you have defined at least once a day, and you'll just set it up with SNMP, and you'll set it up with CLI creds, and it'll be able to go in, pull in that information. I think if they don't have it yet, they were going to add support to have like a seed router. So you could basically give creds to what's called a seed router. It would discover that, and then it would jump in and look at the route table and try to jump to other devices and discover those as well. And once they're discovered, it's a network monitoring, network management solution at that point.
So this would definitely like compete with stuff like SolarWinds,
100%. Yes.
What's Up Gold,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hey,
and
and
the
I
one
feel-
thing, the one
Go ahead.
thing that I didn't expect to see that they ended up having was voice over IP monitoring. So they actually have a built-in solution where you can essentially test phone calls and get the different metrics right there from their platform. That was really interesting. I wasn't expecting to see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think like, just saying generically that it could, replace or compete with like a SolarWinds, like that almost pigeonholes it, because just everything that box could do, like just when you thought like, oh, hey, like that's got to be the last feature. He's like, and bam, like here's more.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, and then that, like in the after talk, with him, when it was just the delegates and the presenter, like he was going into stuff. He's like, oh well, I didn't really touch on this because this wasn't like a security field day, but there's like all these security features and things that it does too, and it's all included in the price. It's not like extra stuff you got to unlock. It was purely like client based, and I think the base price covers 250. Don't quote me on that, but I remember discussions on like the base price included 250 devices, and then you bought additional chunks of devices to cover your network from there.
And just
Gotcha.
when you started talking about don't pigeonhole it, AJ, I completely left out that it's not just servers and voice monitoring, or sorry,
Right.
network and voice monitoring. They have server monitoring as well, so you can
Right.
go discover servers, Windows servers by WMI, and be able to pull information on those as well. And they also had probably one of the coolest tabs I saw of the entire field day was they have a Gremlins tab, which basically, AJ, you might have to explain it better than me, but it's just basically trying to go show you what the weirdest things that you might not catch on your network in one tab.
Right. Yeah.
Huh.
Like if it's
So
seeing a weird process run away, with memory or something like that, or just kind of the anomalies. There's just a collection of them on this tab called Gremlins. It's really cool.
Interesting. But
And a couple
I
other
like the twist
features.
words.
It can act as a NetFlow collector and an IPAM solution as well.
Okay. Now, does it also work as like a config management?
Yes.
Yes.
Great question.
Yep.
Yes, it will
Yep.
pull configs and show you config differences when it senses changes.
And so, can it also make changes in the config? Like, let's say someone got in there and they changed, I don't know, something, and it wasn't supposed to be that way. Can it like let you know and then actually go back and push what's supposed to be in place there?
I don't know that for sure. I don't remember covering that. I would think it could at least do like SNMP. Give it a read-write community, and it could do SNMP.
Right.
But I think you would be doing that yourself. I'm not aware that it had any of that automated remediation.
I gotcha. So one feature that I'm thinking it's called Live Action. I don't know if you've heard of that solution or not, but they can do like QoS policies, and it'll keep up with all that. So like if you want a certain QoS policy, you can build it within their tool, and then it'll actually apply it to your switches.
That's cool.
I don't know if this had something like that or not, but
don't remember covering anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
I got you. So it sounds like it will do the config management and basically just monitor if it changes or anything like that, but not actually, what's the word, remediate any changes or anything like that.
Yeah,
Right.
but I do want to echo what AJ started off with. Is I went into this one fully thinking this was your typical network management system, pulling logs, being able to show you pretty pictures, but it kept, like Michael said in the chat here, it just kept but wait, it's more. It just kept going for the entire hour and a half, 2 hours we were on with them. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was good stuff. Next was Kentech, and if I had to summarize Kentech, I thought that they were along the lines of past solutions. It's like they took the presenters and they paired them up for the day. Like Netbees, past solutions, and Kentech were all kind of along the same lines. I didn't feel like Kentech was as feature rich as past solutions, but it may have been a little bit more polished, I guess. Like it maybe had a cleaner UI. But again, it definitely didn't do everything that GoPath or Path Solutions. I said GoPath Solutions because that's their Twitter handle, so you can follow them at GoPath Solutions. I think another thing that Kentech focused on was paths through the network. So you could give it, a source and a destination, and it would look at the path through the network that it was taking, and give you some information back on that. Like, is it a clean path? Is this the best path to reach your destination, kind of thing? So there was a lot of good stuff from the Kentech solution as well.
Yeah, I think another claim to fame of Kentech is they really focus on synthetic testing. So basically you being able to go into the platform and say, I want these agents, software-based agents, what have you, to test these different applications on-prem, outside, that kind of thing. And to highlight what AJ was saying about the testing the different paths, I want to say this was, and I don't have, for some reason I didn't grab a screenshot, but they had this really cool picture that showed basically a source and a destination and a bunch of different paths it could take out on the internet, and showed all the potential paths. And I didn't understand, how do you do that? How do you get that information? And I believe it was Kentech in this presentation that it's basically their probes to do this is think of it kind of like a trace route, where it'll have a TTL of 1, it'll send it out as far as it can go, come back, then send it out again, TTL of 2, that kind of thing. So it was a really interesting way to build out different paths.
Yeah, couldn't you pull out AS path information too? Like they would actually
that sounds
get,
right.
Yeah. I thought that was unique because I hadn't seen that before. So I guess if you're an enterprise that does BGP, you probably want to know that stuff.
So let me ask this: you were talking about synthetic testing and stuff. Does that do any kind of stress test, or is it just checking the path and hey, is the jitter good? Is there any delay or anything like that kind of thing, or what?
Yeah, I think it's more back to the performance monitoring. What does this look like to the user?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, after Kentech, that was the end of day 2, and that brought us to the last day. And first up was Cisco, and they had a rather lengthy time block, but they covered quite a bit.
Okay.
They started off with the secure SD access solution. Wait, is that right? No, I feel like there was something else.
No, they started with
guys.
data center and Nexus Dashboard.
That's right. Nexus Dashboard. So there were some new features in Nexus Dashboard where they were making their single pane of glass pitch, right? So if you have data center spread all over, you can aggregate all of the Nexus Dashboard feeds into a single dashboard. And I thought one of the kind of cool things about that is you could use the dashboard to click into other dashboards, and if you had other credentials, it would automatically authenticate you using those other credentials. So that way you didn't have to keep re-authenticating at every new tab,
I just want to point out what Jordan just said.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
He said, that's FG Cisco. How many single panes of glass can they have?
So I will say, I got to give credit where credit's due, because a lot of the presenters stayed away from using that phrase, because every single time you hear that phrase, you cringe, because it's never a single pane of glass. You have so many single panes of glass in your network.
So
It's like you got to put it all together and make a window.
I was just going to say, I think you could call this a pane of glass aggregator.
But it was just for data center networking, right? It didn't look at data center compute or anything. Like there's a whole another solution that looks at data center compute. So this was just for data center networking.
Yeah, I saw this as geared toward customers that manage multiple data centers in both on-premises and cloud as well, and being able to view all of those segmented data centers in a one window.
A single glass of
I'm trying
pane.
not to say the phrase.
Right.
So
One thing I kind of struggle with that, right? Like I suppose if your organization is so large that you have data centers spread all over the place, do you really need or want to also monitor your data center compute in the same glass, right? In the same window? Or
because it's probably a different team that's doing that.
yeah,
it is a different team, and you don't want it on the same pane of glass.
Thank you.
See,
Andy.
I'm used to working in smaller teams, and on a smaller team, like you did the data center compute, you did the networking, you did the LAN and the enterprise networking and the wireless. So I guess having a single pane of glass for that audience is a bit harder. But
I like
if you
Eric's
manage
definition. A single glass of pain.
single glass of pain.
That's perfect.
That is excellent. I'm going to use that, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah. Single
So,
glass of pain.
for Nexus Dashboard, I will say I'm kind of intrigued on that because I think that's what we'll be moving to for our ACI because we do have multi-site set up.
Okay.
And with multi-site, you have to have the multi-site orchestrator. And I think they've renamed it, though. I think it's called the Nexus Dashboard Orchestrator now or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But currently, our MSO is running on, it's called a virtual, I'm going to mess this up. It's an ASE. And I can't remember if that's like an application services engine. I think that's what it is.
Sounds right.
And so we're going to have to migrate over to this Nexus Dashboard. But it looks like it will probably make things a little bit easier because I'm pretty sure you just go to it to make your changes instead of going to the MSO.
Right.
So
right.
Definitely be looking into that.
Yeah, I thought that was cool that, it did manage multiple fabrics. It wasn't just for orchestrating and managing ACI. It wasn't just for, managing non-ACI or traditional NXOS switches. It kind of did the whole gambit. And from that single dashboard, you could go to a site and click into ACI, or you could go to another site and click into, the local Nexus dashboard and manage the local Nexus switches there. So it was pretty cool. Overall, I enjoyed the solution. And Nexus Dashboard is not something I've gotten a chance to play with, so I would love to get my hands on that. So that was like part one of the Cisco presentation. After that, they had the same presenters come back and present, I think, another add-on to Cisco Nexus Dashboard, was it? I'm sorry, I don't have my notes in front of me, Tim. I'm trying to remember everything that Cisco covered that day.
I don't remember that. They jumped, so before they got into secure SD access, they got into basically running compliance and infrastructure as a code for network operations in DNA Center.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Network as code in the DNA Center?
Yeah, so one of the big pushes with DNA Center and software-defined access is basically getting people away from manual configuration in CLI and bringing it into a centralized management plane. And that centralized management plane is DNA Center. And it's, again, moving away from those manual configurations to building templatized, that's not a real word,
You got it.
configuration. So one of the things that I really like about it and leveraging these templates in DNA Center is that you can, if the CLI and the normal show running config is your thing, you can basically build a template that looks like a running config. And
Right.
if you want to be able to use it for onboarding or to be able to run compliance against other switches, you can basically create your own variables within a running config and just say, okay, when I onboard a switch, I want to run this template, and it's going to pop up and ask me, okay, you created a variable for uplink interface. What do you want that to be? What do you want your loopback 0 to be? That kind of thing. So it's taking the CLI config SSH into devices and bringing it into DNA Center and managing it there.
I got you. So just like less input essentially, and let it do the back end. Like, hey, this is going to be its NTP server. This is going to be its
Exactly.
SMP server. This
Mhm.
is like, instead of having to go to every single device and do that, you're saying you kind of put it in once in this template, and then that applies it to everything.
Yeah, because what's
gotcha.
the alternative, right? You have a team of 4 people. Engineer number 1 has their CLI template. Engineer number 2 has theirs. Number 3 has theirs. Number 4 has theirs. They're going to be fairly similar, but they're going to have differences. So it's basically aggregating that template into DNA Center and just building off of it there.
I got you. Okay.
So that wasn't at all tied to the SD Access solution. This was just DNA Center doing this for your network, which is new because it would do that if you were doing SD Access, right? Like if you were letting DNA Center fully control your network and build your SD Access fabric, it would templatize the config and let you put in some variables and stuff like that. But now Cisco's talking about providing this, for you to manage your traditional network through DNA Center as the hub.
I got you. Now, did they bring up anything about DNA Center being cloud facing, like in the cloud, like cloud service? Sorry.
So what's continued to be the narrative is that DNA Center is still a UCS based on-premises appliance.
I got you. I'm just curious. It seems like they're like, I don't know, like they're dragging their feet on that. Everybody else is, all their solutions are cloud solutions. And,
we will see.
Yeah.
Are you talking smack
Center,
on Cisco's DNA Center?
I'm not talking smack. I'm just saying that.
The
So
delivery
listen,
model.
Cisco. Listen, Cisco, if you're out there listening and you've been thinking about a sponsorship on the Art of Network Engineering podcast, it's Dan who has a problem with your single pane of glass, and it's Dan who has a problem with DNA Center. If you want to throw enough money around, I mean, we could talk about what to do with Dan. That's all I'm saying.
I know.
Because Dan's got a lot to say about Cisco right now. That's all I'm saying.
I would hope that our listeners would like my honesty.
No, I
appreciate that.
Yeah, most definitely. No, you're right, Dan. I mean, everybody's going to cloud, right? Why would you leave it? Why would you leave it on-prem? It doesn't make sense.
I think the big thing there is that they already have a cloud solution for managing your network, and that's Meraki. And so if you bring DNA Center to the cloud, one, like DNA Center's a big workload. Like you have to put it on these heavy duty appliances because every single thing that DNA Center is doing, it's aggregating information from microservices. So it's running tons and tons of containerized services like SNMP and all the network monitoring and everything else that it's doing. And then, behind the scenes, it's taking all of that data in and then doing the analytics and all the other stuff to it. The next segment that Cisco talked about was the secure SD Access fabric. They started making connections to the cloud. And I thought that this was pretty cool because when you're talking about profiling devices on your network, you see the devices that you see, the devices that you have on your network, but you don't know the MAC address and you got to go into ICE and you got to say, oh, well, this device is this, it's a MAC address. And so it's trusted kind of thing. And so one of the unique things that they're doing is they're pulling all of this information, the manufacturer, the MAC address, the OUI, and then, the general profile, like, is this a trusted device? Like, can we verify that based on this information, this is a trusted device? So they're pulling all of that information out of all of their different DNA Center appliances, and they're aggregating it into what they refer to as a data lake. And so when you stand up your DNA Center secure access fabric, it will pull that information down from the data lake. So that way your DNA Center doesn't have to learn and profile these devices as if it's never met them. It could use the information that's been aggregated from all these other customers to be able to help you verify. And like also give it like a more solid classification on what is this device actually. Because sometimes you'll get vendors like, HP will build a laptop and they'll also provide an OEM with a solution. So if you just see it as an HP box in your network, is it a domain machine? Is it not a domain machine? Is it part of an appliance or not part of an appliance? So I think that was one of the cool things that we're doing with that data lake.
I got you. So what you're saying is that if they do DNA as a service, I'm gonna have to have like a dedicated gig internet pipe just for that, just for the information that's gonna be sent to
I don't think it was that much information.
Oh, okay. Just curious.
Yeah, because I don't think it's not like you pulled down the data lake. It just, I think between ICE and DNA Center, it could help quickly send that information and pull down, a better classification for profiling.
And that was what AJ was just talking about on kind of things getting profiled as just generic like HP or Dell devices. That's a challenge that customers were seeing as well, is because they want to leverage the power of Cisco's Identity Services Engine, which is the AAA solution that goes hand in hand with software-defined access. It's the policy plane for software-defined access. And people want to be able to accurately profile. So one of their examples was in the healthcare field, a CT scanner. So at its heart, a CT scanner may just be a Windows 10 workstation. But if you're trying to bring these devices in and profile them and then apply policy based on those profiles, you want the most specific device information as you can get. And what they touted was that they're running deep packet inspection in their network gear, combined with dynamic feeds that they're pulling in from outside vendors to be able to help categorize these devices so you can build proper policy against them.
Yeah, because I don't work in healthcare, so someone correct me if I'm overstepping my boundaries here, but I think sometimes when you get those purpose-built solutions, you can't always, even though it's a Windows machine, you can't always join it to the domain and manage it through group policy or, other software assets that you normally push to a workstation, right? So you have to be able to put it in a place where you can trust it. And I think, a lot of healthcare and other organizations do that through ICE and profiling.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Like putting it in like a remediation subnet or something like that. Is that what you're trying to get?
Well, if you can't manage it and secure it, and you're probably logging into it with an insecure password or the default password that they all ship with, right? So you want to make sure that you're controlling the subnet that it lives in and the traffic that goes into and out of it. And by being able to properly profile it, you can put it in that correct place in the network and not get it misprofiled and have it live in the network with the rest of your end user workstations, right?
Right. Okay. That's what you're saying.
Yep.
No trust in them.
That boy, Dan.
Or zero trust. That's dang it.
Zero trust.
The buzzword.
Yep. Zero trust. That was definitely the buzzword.
Yeah.
Tim, am I missing anything else from Cisco? I think that was it from Cisco. I think the secure SD access.
The only other thing about SD access that I wanted to bring up was a question that I had. So Cisco's had this security methodology around since, I think, pre-inception of ICE, and it's the TrustSec model. So TrustSec basically leverages what are called, they call them scalable group tags now. They used to be security group tags. They call them scalable now because you can actually apply policy that's outside of security. So if you want to be able to mess with PoE levels on a switch, you can do that by a tag. And one thing that I was curious about is that when you build these scalable group ACLs, is what they are, to be able to say, I want this tag to be able to talk to this tag, but not this other tag, is that enforcement happens on egress. So kind of a basic ACL, a packet will come in, the ACL will check it and say if it's good or bad. With the scalable group ACLs is that they get enforced on egress. So the packet actually comes into the network, gets a tag based on what the policy is from ICE, and then it routes as normal, traverses to the edge device, And then that's where the secure group ACL gets looked up and enforced. So my question to them was, well, how do you handle that with when the destination is outside of the software defined access fabric? So let's say it's in the data center and you don't have your endpoint groups mapped out 100% and are able to enforce that. And the answer to that was you can leverage what's called SXP peering with ICE. And basically it does a group tag to IP mapping that they can look up. And you're basically just building a basic IP ACL at that point. So that was their answer to that.
It's kind of interesting though, like why they would do the egress. I mean, I'm sure there's some reason for it, but that seems kind of like wasted traffic, right? Like
and that's where I was going, Dan. Is I'm like, I'm used to ACLs like in the ICE world, the downloadable ACLs. You profile a device, it gets its policy. ICE pushes what's called a downloadable ACL, which is basically just a dynamic ACL. You could move that device to another port, and the ACL will follow it. And that enforcement happens on ingress. Packet comes into the switch, and it gets handled right there. And what they're saying is, I'm probably going to botch this, but for the switch to be able to download basically that capacity of an SGACL to cover the entire policy of the entire company would be too process intensive to handle on ingress to be able to basically push that to each switch. Versus on egress, it can just do a lookup and say, hey, this is my source tag. This is the destination tag. Is this allowed? That's kind of what I gathered from that. But I had that same question.
So basically, they're saying that the amount of traffic that would be wasted if you just sent it on and then blocked it at the end is less than what it would probably be trying to load all those scalable tags on each device to catch it on ingress. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Basically, the secure group ACL could be too cumbersome for the switches to handle if they had to download it and enforce traffic at ingress.
Gotcha. I guess, yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Well, after the Cisco presentation, we heard from a brand new company. At least it was brand new to me. I know I certainly never heard from them, and they were called ZPE Systems. Have any of you guys ever heard of them?
ZPE? No.
No. So I couldn't tell you what ZPE stands for. If they told us, I certainly don't remember. But they were an out-of-band network solution, out-of-band management solution. But they also kind of did some SD-WAN stuff. And then they also kind of sort of did some network function virtualization. They partnered, so they have a device. It is a router, and they have a bunch of different devices in their portfolio. But I remember one of them they partner with Palo Alto, and you could run their virtual firewalls on that device and then control that using, Palo Alto's control plane and for policy and stuff like that. And then it would do the enforcement local on the box. They did have a big switch, and one of the places that they're really popular in is cloud data centers. And so they produced a 96 port console management device for out-of-band management. So you could plug in, you can put this at the top of the rack and plug in all the devices for probably that rack and that entire row.
You say 96?
Yeah, 96 ports. That's 2 or 3 rack units, right, AJ?
No, it was one. That was 48 in the front unit. And 48 in the back.
Unit?
One rack unit,
so
96
it has it on
port.
both sides. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, how in the world did they fix 96 connections?
It's a lot of dongles.
Yeah. They got that from Apple or something, like the dongle.
Right. No.
So something I wanted to add about ZPE is that I hadn't really seen in a platform out there. So they have these different sensors that you can tie into this out-of-band management device. So if you're looking at a normal server rack, you can have different sensors to make sure that the door got shut, to check for humidity and moisture and airflow, and all of this ties physically back into that ZPE out-of-band management. I think
they even had
device.
like water and smoke detectors too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So would that be kind of like in line with Schneider APC Because they have that kind of stuff. Would it?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
Like I think it was kind of like a NetBots. I know NetBots is like camera, but you could also attach other sensors to it. So this was like your out of band management platform, and you could connect a bunch of sensors to it. And I believe one of their models had different blades you could pop in there. So if you wanted to virtualize something, you could pop in a compute blade, or if you wanted to aggregate a bunch of data, you could pop in a storage blade. Or if you wanted to have a bunch of sensors, you could add in a blade that all your sensors connected to. So they were really modular, and you could, build them for whatever purpose you needed to do that.
Okay. Now, you were saying they also kind of do like out of band management. Is it kind of like what we've seen with OpenGear, or did they go too deep into that? Or it sounded like they talked about the sensors that they have.
Yeah. I would say they definitely compete with OpenGear, but what I thought was different with ZPE is while they were pitching us the out of band management, they were also showing us like, oh, we can kind of do SD-WAN too. And it's just like, well, wait a minute. Like, am I putting production traffic over you? Or are we doing SD-WAN for the OOB network? Like, what's going on here?
Well, was that question asked?
Yeah, we talked to them about that kind of offline, and their response was, well, it's something we can do, right? Like, and so it's like, okay, so we I guess you kind of got to figure out your marketing a little bit, but it was really cool because they did have an SD-WAN solution, and they were putting these in remote places to do the SD-WAN function, as well as managing devices at that site, and then of course they were also deploying out of band management, and I think with the OOB solution, they have a lot of the stuff that we've seen with OpenGear as well previously, right? Like they have automation solutions built in. I think I will say from what I recall from OpenGear and hearing from ZPE, I feel like ZPE went a little bit deeper with some of that stuff as far as the integrations that you could get out of it.
Yeah, I think I saw. I don't want to. After last week's episode, I don't want to say I feel pretty sure about anything anymore, but I think I saw their little like tool display or whatever. I don't know what you would call it. Their menu, and did it have like Jenkins plugins and stuff like that for it?
Yeah. I think you could connect your CI/CD pipeline directly to it and
okay,
automate from there.
I got you. Okay, interesting.
But from a basic out of band management, Dan, so they have a SaaS-based hosted cloud portal that these devices, if you get them brand new, they can basically pre-provision them by the serial number to your account. So you could effectively ship it out to a place. If it's got leveraging LTE, it can basically phone home and join and get its zero-touch provisioning from that cloud portal, and that's how you manage it as well.
I got you. So it sounds like a Meraki, but for out of band management.
Yeah. It was a cool company, interesting solution. One of those things. Check it out. Keep an eye on it. See how they see what they do in the future, and especially now that they've presented at Networking Field Day, maybe more people will take a better look at them or a closer look at them.
And I got to give them props. They were extremely gutsy with their demo. They actually had a small rack of gear that they brought up one of these ZPE devices, zero touch provisioning over LTE in a spotty connection. And they went full send on it and got it up and got the devices discovered, and were able to basically get to everything in the rack.
Was the presenter sweating bullets? That would have been.
Yeah, I think he was saying it was taking a little bit longer because he doesn't have like the best LTE connection, and in fact, I think he was in Ireland and he was on GSM or something. Like it wasn't even like full LTE.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah, no, it was a cool demo for sure. I do. There was like a good split, right? Like there was a lot of presenters that took the risk and did like a live demo on like a live environment, but then there was some that just like played the video, and honestly, like sometimes you couldn't tell until they paused it because somebody asked a question and before it would move on to the next, they're like, oh, hang on, and like they had to pause their demo before went on to the next session. And we've all seen demos blow up in a live format, so I can certainly understand why they would want to pre-record something so that way they know it's going to come off nice and clean. But I appreciate both angles, right? Like if you're going to take the risk and do a live demo to show how well your product works, like, hey, and you can do it. You prayed to the demo gods and did your sacrifices for the day to pull it off. So, all right. So the last presenter was Riverbed, and I thought that was cool because one of the presenters, you might know him as Network Phil on Twitter. He has his own blog. He was a Cisco champion, and he was a field day delegate, and now he was on the other side of the table, and he was presenting to Networking Field Day for the first time. And I will say at the beginning of Riverbed's presentation, it was like, what is going on here? Like they were building up this huge story.
Yeah, AJ, I have never seen a presentation like this before. Yeah. So as AJ said, I'm sure a lot of you know Network Phil. He went into this multi-minute. I gotta say the build-up was probably almost 10 minutes long. And just to step back, they were pitching multiple facets of Riverbed's monitoring and visibility tools. So they set the scene with this completely nationwide fictitious company. It was a rental car company that had kiosks at a bunch of different airports, and all of a sudden they were getting calls from specific airports that they were having issues. And yeah, like for a second there, I thought this was a real company. I mean, they put so much into this bit. It was really interesting. I've never seen anything like it.
Right. Yeah, and so after they did this like 10-minute long build up and gave us all of this, like they went into incredible detail. Like, we've got app servers that live here, clients that live here, they're thin clients, and like just incredible detail into this whole fictitious company. And then they started with like, okay, we've got a help desk ticket. Let's dig into the network and see what's going on. And so they, of course, by the time we get to the end and figure out what the problem is, we realized, well, we probably could have figured that out a lot quicker than we did, but they wanted to take us through this entire suite of different tools. And so the chase started by looking at, I think it was like utilization on an endpoint, and the endpoint had some mining software, some cryptocurrency mining software running on there. And so we're going to send that over to the security guy, and the security guy is going to take a look at it. And while it was definitely a problem, it wasn't the root cause of the issue. So we got to go back to the other dashboard and dig a little bit deeper into the issue and see what's going on. And that gave them the opportunity to pull in each of their tools and tell that tool's story.
Yeah, and something else that was really neat is they kind of gave a high-level point on the different tools that they were showing, kind of what team in an infrastructure or an enterprise would be running this tool. So the first couple tools were kind of geared, and this is my opinion, they were kind of geared toward that first level service desk, desktop support, and then they'd show a tool that was more geared toward security, and then more toward the network team, and how you can kind of bounce in between them. They actually have links within the app, so it's not like this big disaggregated platform. It's all connected, but they wanted to make sure that they showed us what each platform was. So I threw it in the chat. Does anybody want to guess what the problem was? And Jordan nailed it. It was obviously DNS.
That's classic.
I like the way Phil wrapped up the presentation. He showed a haiku of, it's always DNS. It can't possibly be DNS. It was DNS.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was good.
Everybody likes to blame the network, and the network likes to blame DNS.
So that wrapped up Network Field Day 26. Tim, overall, your thoughts? Would you want to be a delegate again based on your experience this time?
Yeah, definitely. Again, I was really nervous about it because I didn't know what to expect. And plus, I saw the attendee list of who the other delegates were, outside of you, of course, AJ and Gerard. You guys scare me enough between the two of you. But it was crazy. I mean, we had multiple hosts from different Packet Pushers podcasts that were on there. I mean, there were some pretty heavy hitters, and I want to tie back to what Tom said when he came on here, is that if you want to be part of this, take your shot. Go in and apply for it. The link that we'll put in the show notes. If you have a platform and you have a way of voicing your opinions and thoughts about technologies, you have a chance of getting on Network Field Day. And I believe it kind of sounds like they're playing it by ear, but they want to get back in person early to mid next year.
Yeah, I think I remember Tom saying they're working on an in-person thing, hopefully soon. So that'll be really nice. I mean, the in-person events are a lot of fun. I mean, you get to meet these people, obviously, in person. You spend an awful lot of time together because, you're all staying at the same hotel. You're traveling. Tech Field Day kind of pulls out the stops, because when I went in 2019, we were out in Palo Alto, and they had us in a limo and they were trucking us around to all these different locations, all these different company headquarters for presentations and stuff like that. And then we're all going out to dinner together, having a good time. So it was definitely like a good, professional and personal networking event in addition to, what we were actually there for. So I certainly am looking forward to getting back into in-person events. And so to echo what Tim said, like there's kind of a shortage of delegates because after you're in the community, you're getting exposure. Eventually, people get hired by OEMs, and then as soon as you're hired onto an OEM, like a major company, your ability to continue to be a delegate goes out the window, right? Because they want you to come to this and be impartial, right? Like if you have skin in the game with a company, it's hard for you to be impartial to your competitors. So there have been lots of delegates that have come through the program, and they've been hired by Cisco, by Juniper, by any other big name that you can think of. But basically, if you're hired by a company that either is going to sponsor a Network Field Day or has ever sponsored a Network Field Day, you're not eligible to be a delegate because it's just it's probably hard for you and to just rule that out, being impartial to your competitors, presenters. So the Traffic Network says, so you're saying that if I become a delegate that I will be hired by Cisco? I'm not quite saying that. It's just, it's been a theme that, these delegates, sometimes these delegates do eventually get hired by companies like Cisco and Juniper. Maybe it's on their career path. I don't know. But as soon as they do get hired, they're no longer eligible to participate in these kind of events. And so that makes room for other future delegates to apply and step into the program. There's definitely no guarantee you'll be hired by Cisco just for being a Network Field Day delegate.
In fact, awesome. I think I might have gotten put on a list to not hire after I got through that field day.
Sounds like you asked some pretty good questions, Tim. I'm proud. I'm definitely proud that 3 members in our community were able to be delegates at this thing and represent our community very well. I didn't get to watch all 3 days, but I got to watch a little bit of the first day there, and I witnessed Gerard asking questions and stuff, and it just made me feel really good because we talked about this on our episode with Tom, but the imposter syndrome when you go into a place like, I guess you didn't go into a place, but got onto a meeting with the people that were also in that meeting, like you said, some of the heavy hitters over at Packet Pushers and whatnot, and to me, like I struggle with imposter syndrome just through the roof, right? And just thinking that I would be in a room with those people, trying to ask technical questions about stuff I have no clue about. It just, it was just awesome seeing you guys there and, stepping forward and asking those questions. So, big kudos to you guys for doing that.
No, I appreciate
and what's
it,
nice is, it's definitely a good time. They gave us so we asked the questions during the presentations, we asked questions post presentation, and then they even gave us the contact information for all the presenters. So if we came up with any additional questions after the fact, we could continue to hit them up and bombard them to get more information out of them. So it's definitely a good time. Guys, any thoughts? Any last minute thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
So there was a question at the very beginning of the podcast.
Oh, did I miss it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. But they were asking which product / vendor were you most impressed by, and any products that stood out that you can't wait to put in or work with.
Ooh.
And I guess this is to Tim and AJ, because you guys are actually part of
it. I don't work in, operations and maintenance and stuff anymore, but if I did, I would definitely be, looking to check out like GoPass Solutions or Netbees or something like that. Like those two are really intriguing, and, to have the kind of visibility that both of those products provide into your network would really help you, understand problems, solve problems, or just defend the network, right? Like, hey, it's not the network, it's your stupid application or whatever. So I thought that those were very insightful products. I was super excited about Juniper's offering because, like I said, having another competitor into that market is just they're just going to help step each other up and bring more feature rich features, I guess. Bring more features to those platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always on board with a tool that will argue to management that it's not the network, rather than me having to do that.
Right.
So.
Right.
I can definitely.
Yeah. Exactly.
What about you, Tim?
Yeah, I'll say that again. I think a lot of it across the board was based on visibility and analytics, and that's going to be what does it for you, Dan. That's going to be your hey, look at this. It's not just me saying it. Look at this pretty picture that says I'm right, you're wrong, kind of thing. and that again, that was a theme across a lot of the vendors, especially ones that are targeting that visibility to the edge. And when I say the edge in this case, I mean even someone's device. I know it's another agent, but in a lot of these cases, they're really lightweight, and the kind of visibility it provides to be able to see that level of information, and based on maybe just somebody's user ID. You may not even have to get their IP address, their MAC address, walk them through how to get that information. You can just say, hey, who are you, or what's your device name, and be able to find all that. And then potentially get a whole bunch of information to help you solve an issue without having to feel like you're interrogating the person calling, having this issue. That's huge.
Yeah. Because a lot of times, too, you just kind of hit a point for me there, is the person who might be calling about the issue doesn't know. they don't know, and you're trying to interrogate them.
And they just get more frustrated, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And then it's just kind of a heated thing at that point. Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely I'm on board with that. Sure.
But the last thing I'll say, AJ, is kind of another reason to get people to apply to be delegates is you can have actual conversations with some pretty high level engineers in these vendors that you may not get to have easily outside of a venue like this. I mean, it was so cool to be able to ask SD access related questions to a Cisco TME live. Right. I mean, that's pretty valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't always get the TME doing the sales pitch to you. It's usually a TSA or an SA or an SE. But to get the people that, work either directly on the products or very closely with the people that work on the products that have, that firsthand knowledge, that deep information, it's good stuff. It's a lot of fun. I don't know if folks saw in the Discord, one of the things that, myself, Tim, and Gerard did is we set up a thread just for activities, and we had our own network field day kind of channel, and we were interacting with a lot of people in our Discord, and so that was a lot of fun, in addition to everything that we were doing on Twitter. So I think that we'll look for more of that as members of our community participate in events like this, be it Tech Field Day, Cisco Live, or anything along those lines, to just keep the conversation going, in our community. So keep an eye out for that.
So AJ, where if any of the listeners want to go watch the NFD presentations, do you just go to their site and they've got the link there, or like is there a special link to it?
So you can go to Tech Field Day's website, which is techfieldday.com, and then the Network Field Day is a recent enough event that you can scroll down to the bottom, and they have a whole section of recent links. You can also just go to events, and they'll show you that they've got here's all of our events, here's the different field days, and you can just look for Network Field Day, and the most recent is 26. And on that page, they'll have, in the exact order that they presented. And we'll put a link to Network Field Day 26 in the show notes for this episode, and that way you can just go to that link, scroll down to the bottom, and it basically is the schedule that we followed for the event. And you can click on each presenter and see the past recordings that they did.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, and I think they've got it on like a YouTube channel too, so you can just go to like Tech Field Day's YouTube channel, and I'm sure it's all there as well. But like I said, we'll put a link to the show notes, that way it's easier for folks to find. Awesome. All right, guys. I think this puts a cap on another episode. Thank you so much for our Patreons for joining us and chatting with us as we record these. If you're interested in being a Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/artofneteng and sign up. We do appreciate our Patreon support, but we appreciate everybody's support, whether you're buying merch, following us on our social channels, leaving feedback for us on your favorite podcatcher. All of that mojo really helps us out. Sharing the podcast with a friend and getting another person addicted and binge listening to our content always helps. So we thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week for another episode of The Art of Network Engineering.
I got to go research my Muppets.
Cookies.
Hey everyone, this is AJ. If you like what you heard today, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcatcher. Smash that bell icon to get notified of all of our future episodes. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Art of NetEng. That's Art of NETENG. You can also find us on the web at artofnetworkengineering.com, where we post all of our show notes. You can read blog articles from the co-hosts and guests, and also a lot more news and info from the networking world. Thanks for listening.